Hello, and welcome to the Brew podcast, episode 56, live streaming today on a beautiful Sunday morning. Joined by, as per usual, Riley Feldman and Kyle Carr. I'm Adam Paris, co-managing editor of brewhoop.com. Guys, we took a week off. Thought that maybe we'd be able to drum up a little more news in the interim. We did not, based on my early returns. So it's going to be maybe a little bit of a basketball light show, but we've prepared an incredible amount of tangentially related content that Riley and Kyle have really been cooking up all week. So, guys, how are you doing? First of all, I should have asked that right out of the gate. Well, how are you guys doing?
I'm doing okay. It's beautiful here in Minneapolis, much as it is apparently over in Philadelphia and hopefully in Madison as well. We've just been kind of hanging out. Yesterday we went down to a couple of the local lakes here in Minneapolis and checked things out, which was cool. The weather was nice, and social distancing is what it's all about.
Yeah, things are good over here. Weather also pretty nice. Emma and I got new patio furniture, so we're going to get that put together, and that'll be nice. If we're going to be staying at home for another month, might as well have that on hand. But with the return of spring weather means the return of allergies. And this is the worst time for my own mental health that for me to have any allergic reactions. And I'm not sure if I've got corona or if it's allergies or if it's a cold. So that's the one negative I will say with the nicer weather is I don't know what my current situation is.
That is fair. I am very fortunate to not have allergies, so I don't have to go through that.
Yeah, it's I don't have much in the way. I'll have some years where it's bad and some years where it isn't, but it's not great.
Hold on. All right, Riley, hold on. Your mic
Is it not working?
It sounds like it's being
No.
Dude, I'm not an Apple fanboy. Hold on.
It's my allergies are awful. I remember a couple of years ago when I was testing to see if I was allergic to cats. I did the test and they have it prick your forearm.
Yeah.
And if it's a large bump, it means you're allergic. And I just remember my whole arm just swelled because everything they tested me for, I ended up being allergic to. So it was a good time to know that. Yeah, every spring I'm going to be miserable for a couple weeks.
But you're good with cats, right? Because you have a cat.
I took allergy shots so that I can build up my immunity to cats. It's still there,
okay,
but it's not as severe as it was. And I think now that we've had her for 3 years now, I'm just used to it.
Okay. You're just used to having a constant state of your skin being on the verge of breaking out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Every once in a while, just a sneezing attack every couple days. It's fine. It's the new norm.
How about now? Now, I know this is definitely we're trying on the fly in the middle of the podcast, but how about now? Can you hear me?
It sounds much better. It sounds like. Do you remember those toy mics that you would have that would just have a spring in it or something? That's basically what it sounded like, but sent through hell as well. It was pretty good.
Okay, good to know. Well, I'm glad it fixed now, so we're good to go.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. Thank you to everyone who's joining us and been listening to us and continuing to listen to us throughout this quarantine period. We're just going to do a brief state and update on the state of the league, what's been going on. Turns out not much, actually. Adam Silver had a conference call this past week. He really seems just as unsure as all of us about when this whole COVID situation might be cleared up enough that they'll be able to resume play. One of his quotes, based on the reports that we got from very outside officials, current public health officials, we are not in a position to make any decisions, and it's unclear when we will be. So if anyone was thinking that there might be some clarity soon, really doesn't seem like it. Obviously, it sounds like they're sort of going through and bringing in, public health officials and smart virologists and epidemiologists to try and tackle this thing. Brian Windhorst talked about a potential 25-day program being tossed out, whereas, sort of 11 days for players to get working out and get up to speed, and then a 2-week training camp, and then the season would sort of resume from there. But that's just one of the potential plans. They said basically they're asking for plans from anyone and anywhere to try and figure out a way to get this going again. So, really we're in the same sort of holding pattern that we've been for a couple of weeks now, Riley.
Yeah, we are. And I think the issue is because they are forced to do horse competitions, and obviously that's just awful TV and nothing about it was great. I understand the desperation for some content. I get it. However, if that leads to them having to purchase an islands in the middle of the Pacific and flying everyone there and then having them quarantine for a few weeks and like doing container shiploads of equipment and food and other, life essential resources there, we might be thinking a little bit too outside of the box to make things happen. And so I appreciate that they're updating us. However, it's probably more appropriate that we just resign ourselves that it's going to be a while. And even Anthony Fauci, he was, and other experts as well, talking about even if we phase in and start opening things up again gradually, the last things that are going to happen that are going to be brought back are essentially big events like concerts, sporting events, things like that. Now, whether or not they can get around it based on however many people, if it's just the players and a couple of staffers and a couple of camera people, maybe that's one thing. But it feels like right now we're still, like you said, and like everybody else has said, kind of guessing in the dark. And I think it's valuable that they're talking about how they're going to start getting out of this. But right now, I'm not sure if any of the plans are all that compelling to say, yes, this is a viable way we could go about it.
Yeah, I feel like it's just going to, with working with all the public health experts, it seems like every state or every area has a different stay at home and how long it's going. Because, you have some states like Wisconsin just recently announced it's going to go until end of May. You might have some others that are just going to decide not to do stay at home. So it's because there's so many different areas that have different measurements and stay at home orders and how long it goes. I feel like it's kind of tough to give an exact date. I know like MLS said we're looking at, I think it was like June, but at this rate, it's probably going to get postponed. It's just like, yeah, I'd rather just them say, we don't know when we're coming back. We're going to, but say, we don't know when we're going to come back, but we're going to finish the current season. Like, I think if they said that, that would be better than trying to give any target date in mind, because, if they say end of May and things haven't gotten better, then you're going to have to postpone it again, and everyone's going to get excited for the end of May, and that's just going to be continuously being pushed aside. So I say just come out with the statement saying we want to finish the season, we just don't know when that's going to be, and if that means we have to sacrifice the following season, so be it. I think that would just be the easier approach to it. But I think everyone's still trying to figure things out, and it's more which league is going to be the first one to kind of say, okay, we're having games back. Because kind of like when everyone was canceling and postponing games, it was kind of at the beginning, it was more which one is going to do it first. And it was the NBA was the first one with Rudy Gobert's situation. And then it kind of just trickled down from there. And now I think it's going to have to be the opposite of which league is going to come back. And because of that, which one is it going to, who's going to follow? But it also depends on, television rights and stuff like that, because, if it's behind a paywall like ESPN Plus, it's a little bit more doable because you still need a camera crew, but it's not as needed compared to, if we get to that point like the NFL where they have to use cable television of like, the CBS's and Fox, then you're going to have to figure that out as well. So I think just depending on what media you're going to use to present it, along with which league is going to be first, I don't know. And I've said it before and I said it again, any league that hasn't started isn't happening in 2020. And any league that's over 50% of the way completed, they'll get back eventually.
Yeah, the lack of clarity, whether they want to continue this season or just go to the next season, I think is probably going to be the most. It's been the biggest talking point. It's going to continue to be the biggest talking point. We'll decide how exactly we want to approach that. I do think it would help if they did come out and say, we are going to try and finish the season. And I'm curious how that makes a difference, because realistically, even if they pushed back the start date of next year's season, Kyle makes a good point that every region is going to be different. Like the LA mayor came out and said late 2021 or something, like he doesn't anticipate sporting events or concert events until then. So like realistically, even if you push back the start date of next season to Christmas, a lot of places you probably won't even be able to have fans yet. I doubt many people will want to go to a large scale sporting event, even at the end of the year, provided there is no sort of large scale sufficient vaccine in place for this. So, realistically at this point, Riley, it would just kind of be like, are they just going to come out and say the playoffs are going to happen? And is that more beneficial given the sort of TV ratings and everything involved with that? And then just sort of say, hey, we're not going to get any sort of, gate revenue from these playoff games. I don't know. I don't really know how they weigh those sort of two factors of like gate revenue of playoff games versus how much more money those are for in terms of TV rights.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this from the very beginning, where if there's going to be something that gets them back on track, it's going to be the amount of money. They're already forfeiting a ton. And I think even the delayed playoffs that happens in December or whenever it happens would be more valuable to them than even a shortened season where there's a slate of like, thank God games are back. Everybody watches it all at the same time. I still think the heightened stakes, even though, and here's the other thing too, right? We're going to go this long, and then are the owners of teams that aren't going to make the playoffs, however they decide to cut it off, are they going to be like, well, what the hell, man? We've been out for however many months. Now we have to wait, another 2-3 months to let the playoffs finish out. And then we're going to, so, it's not even just determining the more than 50% of the league that will probably make the playoffs, depending on if they cut it off. But then it's all the other owners that are like, well, what are we going to do? And so that kind of might throw something in the wrench, unless they figure out something where it's like, we'll try and share out the TV revenue or any sort of revenue we generate. But I think, I was even thinking about it earlier this week where we might realistically, depending on testing and tracing, contact tracing, all those sorts of things as we work it out. I mean, it's moving somewhat slowly here in the US, but in general, maybe we'll be able to slowly open things up. But I think people are still underestimating how much this is going to change things until we get the vaccine, because is anybody going to feel comfortable unless, of course, as we said, they buy like some plot of land in North Dakota and just isolate everybody there, which would be just strange, extreme, but maybe that's how they go about it. But would anybody be comfortable and say, even if you test the dudes constantly, like having these guys play that physical sports, they're all kind of stuck on the bench with each other. Are they all going to be like spread out? So I think they'll probably, there's just a lot of discussions they're going to have to go into it. I think they're going to try and make it happen, but they'll probably be one of the last leagues that do. They'll see, maybe some, sideshow-ish sport like MMA with the UFC. Maybe they'll start, okay, let's see how that goes. Maybe something like soccer or baseball. Maybe I think they'll probably take their cues. So like Kyle was saying, first one's out, probably last one's back in is the process I would expect. I still think they're going to do playoffs, but how they figure out how to split up the revenue to lessen the burden on others, that's going to be the big question.
It's difficult. I don't know. Any other thoughts you guys have? I feel like we'll have this sort of conversation every week, and we still are lacking any sort of like progression at this point.
At this rate, no one knows anything, and we just have to approach it that way. No one knows what's going to happen unless you have a time machine.
Yeah. The only thing I'm curious, I agree with Kyle about that. I'm curious what they're going to be doing about all the other, what's going to be really interesting, not just the revenue sharing and how they come up with different plans, but how they adjust the CBA. And it sounds like they're working with the players union to figure it out, but how are we going to do the draft? How are we going to figure out what the order for that is if the season doesn't actually end yet? Well, how is free agency going to work? How are the contracts going to be extended out? What does this drop in revenue mean for, and this is a good plug for Eric Name's work over at The Athletic. He worked with Daniel LaRue to talk about what this could mean for Giannis's Supermax offer. It's those kind of stuff that, yes, it sucks the season is over. Yes, it's, whatever. It's on pause right now. We haven't been able to see how the playoffs will work out. But what's more interesting is those longer term things, because I think all of us here and most Bucks fans would agree, the biggest thing secondary to winning the championship is what does Giannis do for his next contract? And this, all of this is going to play a huge role in that. So that's why I'm keeping an eye on.
Yeah, and I think that there was some news that owners were pushing to have the draft moved from June to August. So that would be obviously another repercussion of this. I mean, who knows if they'd even be playing ball yet in August, but that's something that you may have to look out for. So
yeah.
Well, one thing that is certain is Dante DiVincenzo continues to provide really quality content. This is going to be a very brief rendition of Dante's Inferno. I watched a few minutes of his interview with Zora Stevenson because God love him. God love the Bucks. They're putting out a lot of content to try and keep us all satiated. But I just wanted to point out one highlight from it. Started off with Dante talking about how he's been working out, making sure he's keeping up with everything. He's sort of a late morning, early afternoon workout guy for anyone who didn't watch it and was curious. But one thing he did note was he said he's basically still doing has to do his rehab work because otherwise he might, it might all go back to the same heel issue he had last year, which I didn't realize was a thing where you sort of have a heel issue and you have to keep doing rehab work a year on. So kudos to you, Dante, for keeping up on the work that you need to keep your heel in place, keep your foot in place, and keep you as a functioning human among us all. Also said he's playing a lot of Call of Duty, so that's good. That's good to hear. Good for Dante. Yeah, that was about it. I'm sorry. I couldn't watch the whole thing. I meant to watch it for everyone to give people highlights, but I just couldn't do it. So
that's fine. You already watched the 2K, and that was enough torture on yourself.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, Kyle. Guys, let's move on to our next segment. Like I said, going to be a little basketball light this week, but this week we have who would we want from this random Bucks team on this year's Milwaukee Bucks team. So we have chosen the 1990-1991 Milwaukee Bucks, an all-time barn-burning team. What they finished 48-34 or something. They did okay.
This is the definition. The entire 90s, they did okay.
They were good for 90 standards.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. 48-34, not bad. Third in the Central Division. So, I can go first, guys, because I put this up pretty late in the outline, so I'll go first and go with my answer. So, I looked through this roster. A couple of intriguing players in there, a couple of intriguing guards, but who I ultimately went with was a 35-year-old Jack Sikma, and he's in his last season in the NBA, last ride with the Milwaukee Bucks. As some people know him, Goldilocks, one of his nicknames, also Banger. But what this guy did, fellas, is his age 35 season. Okay, this is an old man at this point. 10.4 points per game. He's still getting 5.7 rebounds per game, 1.9 assists, 0.8 steals, 0.8 blocks. Not great for a dude who's a center, but 77 games, 25.2 minutes per game. Started almost half the season. But what really intrigued me is the 34.1% 3-point percentage on 1.8 attempts per game. Guys, this guy was a stretch five, clearly, ahead of his time.
Mm-hmm.
I watched 3 minutes of highlights of him before this. His shot is one of the ugliest I've seen in a long time, but God love him, it went in better than Brook Lopez. So what I'm going to do is bring in Jack Sikma, give us an old guy on his last legs. It's been, was in Milwaukee for a couple years before this. So I'm going to bring in Jack Sikma. And Robin Lopez, you're off the team. So we're bringing in Jack Sikma, getting rid of Robin, breaking up the Lopez twins. But what I like is I like Sikma's length and I like his 3-point ability. That's what I'm thinking. So that's
we're basically bringing a healthy Pau Gasol is what you're saying.
Yes, yeah. Thank you. Yes, a healthy Pau Gasol for the chemistry. Yes, and the leadership.
I honestly, looking through this, like you said, you kind of put it up a little bit late, which is no big deal. Looking at the roster, my heart immediately goes again to Frank Brickowski. I'm thinking the guy that I saw 2 weeks ago, just a little bit younger, so like the potential's even higher. But looking up Brad Lowhouse, when you just YouTube his name, the first 2 videos are Dennis Rodman versus Brad Lowhouse. And then the second one is Brad Lowhouse denies Michael Jordan in February 27th, 1990. And the description of that video says, NBA record, whitest man ever to block Michael Jordan. So I think that feels promising. I'm going to pull up the denial here, but maybe I'll go Brad Lowhouse just for the sake of it. But yeah, so that's my take.
Yeah, this is tough because there's not really a lot of young pieces that jump in and help out with this team. I was also because I recognize some of the names just because when I was doing my what if on the Don Nelson Bucks, there's some names that kind of are left over, and primarily Ricky Pierce. The only issue is Ricky Pierce was battling injuries, so only played 46 games, but he would have been a great six-man. Even though he only played 46 games, he still got 22 points, 22 and a half points per game, shooting 39% from three, so that would have been very appealing. But I think if I had to choose, I would go with, let's go by the slimmest of the margins, Jay Humphries, who led the team in assists, 6.7 assists, 15.2 points per game. He's 28, so still relatively young enough, played 34 minutes. He was still able to get 50% from the field, 37% from three. Free throws was almost 80, so he's reliable with shooting the ball and getting to the basket. I think he would just be a good playmaker to have on the team, someone that can handle the responsibility. Again, it's been in the league long enough. So I would go with Jay Humphries, and I would most likely take Pat Connaughton out of the lineup just because we probably don't need another guard on the roster. And while Pat Connaughton's shooting would be very helpful, I would think Humphries would be able to just give George Hill and Eric Bledsoe a breather, and then that way we don't have to rely on Dante. As great as he is, we can take the playmaking responsibility out of Dante's hands.
I love it. Guys, we've made the team superior.
I have an update on these Brad Lowhouse videos. So two things. On the Dennis Rodman versus Brad Lowhouse clip, it just has a giant graphic that says those exact words over the fight, so you can't even see the fight. The block was not impressive. I'm not going to lie. Now, could you teach Brad to do the Brook Lopez, just keep the arms up, drop scheme? There's potential, but the block was not great. And then the only other videos I'm really seeing are a Karl Malone, quote, in your face, Brad Lowhouse. So I'm guessing he dunked on him. And then this other video says Milwaukee Bucks, Brad Lowhouse jams. So it's from the 1993 season, all of his dunks. It's 10 seconds long, and it's two dunks. They play them at normal speed, and then they play each dunk slowed down. That's all it is. So it feels like there's still like potential because even Brook Lopez doesn't dunk that much. So maybe he would also be my Robin replacement, kind of along you there, Adam. But I guess I feel a little more shaky about my pick at this point, having seen the highlights and lack thereof.
Yeah, well, I'll admit that the Sigma highlights were also from earlier in his career, and one of them was just him getting a rebound. It's fine.
Hey, you know what? Basketball was a different sport at that time. The feats that you were expecting these guys, it was different. It was a whole different game.
Which we will understand when we watch The Last Dance. We'll get a good glimpse of 90s basketball.
Hey, speaking of The Last Dance, it's time for rapid fire questions, guys. And one of them, the first one, has to do with that. So my question to you is, which current Bucks player would you like a 10-hour documentary on, a la The Last Dance?
So my initial take obviously is Dante. If Dante's not going to be the guy, I'm trying to, so like, I can't even remember who the hell's on the team anymore. Let me pull up the roster so I can get a vibe for. I mean, so obviously the easy pick is Giannis, right? So let's do a non-Giannis category because we already know about it. He's going to have a Disney movie. The whole thing's already coming up. So if it was going to be him, probably a guy with a bit of a longer career. I don't know. Kyle, do you have any somebody that really jumps off the page for you?
This is where I really wish John Henson was still on the Bucks because that would be a fun time. But
it'd be a lot of content it'd be a lot of Chipotle shots is what
it'd be a lot of fishing, it'd be a lot of Chipotle. I think I'd go with George Hill. I think with his career that he's had and the variety of teams that he's played for, and he's pretty much been around playoff contending teams or teams that had superstar players most of his career. So I think it would be interesting to see his approach to it. And knowing that he was part of the trade that got San Antonio Kawhi Leonard would be a nice little wrinkle in that as well. So I think George Hill's career would be pretty interesting. And based off of some of the stories that we've gotten from the Journal Sentinel, his off-the-court life seems pretty it also seems interesting between his like hunting and all the other stuff that he does. So I'd go George Hill is the first name that comes to my head.
I don't know why I blanked on this. It has to be Ursan. He's lived and died 6 separate lives in the NBA. He was drafted, played, went overseas again, came back. We have no idea where he's actually from, what his actual name is. Allegedly. Obviously, he's Ursan. Allegedly. But think of, you get this glimpse on like all those really cruddy 2000s Bucks teams, early 2010s. A little bit of the drama back. You get his backstory, which I'm sure is really interesting given everything that's in the air about it. He doesn't strike me as necessarily maybe the most like fascinating personality per se, but just using him as the avatar to get a glimpse of the rest of the team and then just kind of get an idea of his career just because he's done the same thing for so long. So I would say Ursan if we were doing the non-Giannis category.
I would watch the Ursan one. I would watch it just to figure out who taught him the weird step back shot that he did. Where did he learn that? How did he learn that? What was he like? Did he go like Batman style, like into the mountains for months to teach himself that? It was crazy, guys. I love
Who
that.
taught him all the charges and perfected that art? That would be my follow-up question.
Next one. Let me set the scene. Okay, you just cooked some hot dogs. Do you put ketchup or mustard on them?
Ketchup.
Both.
Wow.
Okay.
But if you had to choose one or the other, if
I had to choose for a hot dog, probably ketchup. If it was brats, I'd do mustard.
Now, are you guys condiment people? Other condiments like are you? I mean, little accoutrements. Do you put little onions on? Are you guys sauerkraut people? Or are you just like squirt that ketchup on and then you're good?
I could do sauerkraut. That's it.
I do a little bit of everything. So I don't like a traditional Chicago style necessarily, but I appreciate the theory where you're just tossing a whole bunch of crud on it. So a little bit of relish, onions. I'm okay with like a pickle, ketchup, mustard. The sesame seed bun. I like tossing a bunch of things. I got no problem with covered. Now, do I have like particular favorites? Not necessarily, but if you put a whole bunch in front of me, a whole bunch is going on.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Next one. Did you have any superlatives in your senior year yearbook? Like, did you receive any superlatives?
No.
No. I don't think so for me either. I think. No, not really. I wasn't noteworthy in high school, which is okay. That's nothing wrong with being not noteworthy in high school, but I don't remember anything being like, this guy is known for this or he will do this, which is okay by me.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would your number be if you were on the Milwaukee Bucks?
It's really lame. I think for a lot of people, their favorite number is obviously the day they were born. So my number would be 13, which is lucky and unlucky. I think it counteracts it because I was born on a 13th day. I counteract the general unluckiness of 13, so I would go with 13.
Well, I was going to say, I think so. My number in high school was 32, but that is currently retired in Milwaukee. So I think I'd go. Oh wait, so it was 14. I'd probably go 32 because that was the number I had in high school for basketball.
I like it. I think I do like some number that maybe as few people as ever would wear it, so I could be as like one of the best Bucks ever to wear this when they do the jersey thing. I think I'd be like 53 or something. Like no one would ever. Hopefully, no one would ever wear that. So it'd probably be that. All right, last one. So during the quarantine, is there any like things you've been able to get to do or like something you've always wanted to do or like anything like sort of like bright spots that you've been able to make out of this more time at home?
I've been able to more closely look at the all-star rosters from this past year to do a theoretical draft to figure out. Just kidding. No, one thing that I have started doing a little bit is I've been doing some sketching. Which sounds somewhat lame, but I think we're all trying to figure out what best to do in these times. So I got a like kit from our local Michaels, which is just like a spiral bound sketching paper and like 10 pencils of differing like lead strength or what's the word? Firmness, I think is the correct term. So I've been kind of doing that a little bit. I suck, obviously, but I've been doing that a little bit. So I just tried to find what's some like artistic, crafty thing I could do that sounds somewhat interesting, and that's what I've fallen on.
Yeah, I would say the nice thing about the quarantine is the amount of time I've gotten to spend with my kid, especially with missing kind of the first 3 months just with work and everything, and now being home all the time, kind of just seeing how much larger he's growing and how much more awake he is. So I would say that's been nice, but baking would probably be my thing. I kind of got into it last fall and then took a break just because of my son being born. So I didn't really have time and energy to do it, but I've gotten back into it now. So I did some oatmeal and oatmeal raisin cookies last week, which turned out pretty well. Did a banana bread as well. So I think it's going to be, I want to get to the point where I'll do a bread, but I need to get more confidence and getting more comfortable before I get to it. So baking would probably be my thing.
I love it, guys. Brings a tear to my eye. That's so happy.
Have you picked up anything, Adam?
I finally started reading again. I've just been like, I've been that butthole who like every year is like New Year's resolution. I'm gonna start reading again.
75 books this year, baby. Book
it. And I would kind of read it, and I'd be like, wow. Well, I also have my phone. You know, there's also TV. So I finally have been able to start reading again and like actually sit down and find reading to be enjoyable. So that has bbeen fun for me.
Anything in particular that you don't have to go too deep into it, but is there something you're currently reading or did read that you found compelling?
Do you guys know the Dune science fiction series?
Yes.
Have you heard about
this?
Yeah. So I read it when I was younger, and it was one of the most incomprehensible books I ever read as a middle schooler. So I'm reading it as an adult and finding it actually to be quite enjoyable, quite intellectually stimulating. And I really wanted to revisit it before the movie that's supposed to come out later this year. So I'm excited for that.
You're going to have time because I'm guessing that movie's going to get delayed. So no rush on that.
Yeah, I know. Makes me really sad, but that's okay. So,
hey, Anna, sorry, I just saw his comment. So what's up, NS?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we got tons of watchers in right now, tons of viewers in.
It's a huge streaming week. StreamYard did say they might have to shut us down. Okay. Oh, hey, speaking of movies, Kyle, you said you have several film reviews ready for us, I think.
Yeah, so with the break from last week, it gave me more time, obviously, to watch movies. But I was sitting and watching 2 rom-coms with Emma. The first one we watched was The Imagination of Lying, which I have no clue if you guys know about that one. I think it was like mid to late 2000s, I want to say. It had Ricky Gervais, Jennifer Garner, I think, was in it. Rob Lowe, he was in it. And it's pretty much like this society in which you just say whatever's in your mind. Like, lying is not a thing. You just say everything you say is brutally honest. So it's kind of funny in one aspect where it's like, I'm not attracted to this guy. I don't know if I'll go out on a second date. And like, they'll even say it like they're texting their parents and they'll just like say their thought out loud. So kind of how that worked. And then the main character he works they like make movies based off of a time period. So he has the 13th century, which is ironically the plague. So then he gets fired from that, kind of down on his luck, runs out of money. And then he kind of like makes up a lie how much money is his bank account. It kind of just snowballs from there. He kind of realizes that he can tell whatever story he wants and everyone's going to believe him because lying is not a thing. There's no such thing. But then his mom is dying, so then he tells his mom about this, like, kind of like makes fun of religion. Because then he tells her, like, oh, yeah, there's just, like, this place with the man in the sky, and, like, all this stuff, and everyone's like, how do you know about this? And he talks about it. So it's kind of poking fun at religion, just saying, like, he makes his own 10 commandments and stuff like that, and how far he goes with the lie to try and win over Jennifer Gardner. So it was a solid movie. You know, we watched it on, like, a Sunday afternoon. I'd probably give it a 5.5, 6. Kind of predictable.
Okay.
Had its moments of comedy, though. So, yeah, that was the first movie. Then the second rom-com we watched, I think it was later that night, or maybe the day after. It was called The Wedding Year. And that one had one of the main characters from Modern Family, Sarah Hyland. That's the one. It had her and Tyler James Williams, who most notably was young Chris Rock and Everyone Hates Chris. And they start dating, but they end up going to like 7 weddings in a year, which, good Lord, that's a lot of weddings. I have been close to doing that, but 7 weddings is a lot. Just trying to discover this was a relationship just because they're 20-somethings that don't know what they're going to do with their life, and they have these dreams, and they live in LA, so they're broke. And it was all right. It was kind of hard to sympathize with the main characters just because it's like, this doesn't seem realistic. Like, as crappy as your personality is, I don't think there's an actual... It's very hard to see an actual human function that way. So that was... It was solid. That one I'd give a 5. Easy, good background music, but wouldn't watch again. And then last week, this is the big one, it was Parasite. Finally got around to watching it. If you haven't seen it, it's on Hulu. It is... I didn't know what to expect from it, just because I kind of knew like the general gist of like it being about class warfare, more or less. But the extent that the class warfare kind of goes into, and like how the poor family in their situation, how they get into living in the rich people's lives and getting involved in rich people's lives, and just like, especially in Korea, just how that dynamic works. And I mean, it's not just Korea, it's everywhere in the world, but it was very noticeable, just like how someone can smell. It's like an indication of if they're poor or not, like how they smell, how they act. I mean, the rich family got duped really easily, which was kind of funny, just because it was like the whole scheme, it shouldn't work. And like a smarter human would have caught onto it right away. But it just started like that. And then as things got more and more dark and twisted, and it was a really good movie. In which, like, it gets to the end, and I'm going to try not to spoil it just because if you have a chance and if you have a Hulu subscription, I'd recommend watching it. Just like how the main plot turns halfway through the movie, and then you think, okay, this plot's going to get resolved, and then it'll be fine. It's like, nope, it just continues going. There's a couple more plot twists at the end. So it was a very intriguing movie. I can see why it's gotten the high reviews that it did. I really enjoyed it. Reading all the subtitles didn't bother me. I mean, it was like very quick and easy to read, and you kind of understand what's going on anyway. So I would give that a 9 out of 10. It was a really good movie. If you are a rich person, I would not love that movie just because I'm sure. Yeah, it definitely doesn't paint the rich in a good light, which I think is well deserved and fair. But yeah, just the dynamics of it all was interesting.
Would you say, and I don't watch movies at all, so I can't say one way or the other, was the Oscars, is that what it won? Did it win Best Picture at the Oscars?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you saw any of the other ones, but would you say it compared to any of the other films, was it a Oscar deserving film? I mean, 9 out of 10 is pretty high. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's like, just based on some of the other movies that have won Best Film at the Oscars, Parasite is definitely up there.
Yeah.
So I would say it was a deserved winner. If it was in English, I don't think anyone would have, like, I think people's main complaint was that it was in Korean and you had to read the subtitles, which...
How dare they?
Whatever. I mean, there was a whole movie, I think it was like The Artist or something that like was in black and white, and I don't even think had any words, so... Yeah, it was a good movie. I enjoyed it. It's long, I will say that. So if you have about 3 hours to spare, definitely recommended.
Parasite's good. I like Parasite as well. It was good. It's a fine film. Yeah. For that, and that's why I won't get on the back of the box. But Kyle will, as I just said. Fine film. Kyle, 9 out of 10. If you're rich.
If you're rich, you probably give it a lot more.
Hey, $13-14 has a question. What is everyone's favorite band? So I'm going to modify it slightly because I feel like no one can ever just say one. So like if you just have a couple bands, I think it'll give like an idea of your musical taste, which might be kind of fun.
Kyle?
I'm trying to think.
I can go first then.
So are we talking like bands or just like musicians in general?
Musicians in general, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just musical artist. I would say my favorite band is a 90s grunge band called Soundgarden. I don't know if you've probably heard maybe a song or two of theirs, which their more popular ones aren't necessarily my favorite ones, but Chris Cornell was an amazing singer. I kind of discovered him through his second project, Audio Slave, which are also really good. I kind of found them in my like angsty teen years, so it was perfect, you know, a match made in heaven, but they're super awesome, just straightforward, not really all that straightforward. You know, they blended a little bit of metal, a little bit of hard rock, all into like what became alternative rock eventually, but I think probably the best iteration of it. So every single song of theirs, I know damn near every word to all of them, whether it be the EPs, the old like B-sides, whatever it is. I just love everything they do from top to bottom. So they're my favorite band by far.
I would say my favorite musician is Childish Gambino. That's easy, aka Donald Glover. Just the music that he had, and it's kind of similar to Riley, where it's like, especially in the angsty teen years, for me, it was more like late high school, early college, when I didn't really know who I was as a person and like couldn't really relate to a lot of people, but Donald Glover seemed like one of the few people that I could, and like his music kind of spoke to that, especially like his early rap albums. Then as he's progressed as a musician, where he's shifting from rap to more like an R&B to more like funk. So just like seeing his progression as a musician has been one of the coolest things that I've been able to see. So he's probably my favorite. Other groups I like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a big Adele fan. I'm not a shit. She can sing. Holy hell. Like, it's great. I was a big fan of the Beatles. Growing up, the babysitter that my parents had for me, she was a big Beatles fan, so she would just constantly play Beatles music. So I kind of just grew to like them a lot. Otherwise, Bob Marley, Kendrick Lamar. I don't really have a 90s, like I don't have a rock band though. That's kind of the weird part. Like I don't mind rock music. Like I'll listen to it. It's just I don't have a favorite.
It's not that good of a genre much these days, in my opinion. So it's okay with going with older stuff for the most part, and even the Beatles. And also, Because the Internet, that's an awesome album. It's really the only.
That's my favorite album of his.
Is his first album Camp? Is that the name of the first album? Or I can't remember.
His first album with the record label was Camp.
Yeah, so I listened to that
Which
one.
I think
That's
has some
pretty
of his
good
best
too.
songs, but
yeah, but Because the Internet, from top to bottom, everything on that is really good. So I would second, if you're looking for a Childish Gambino, it's a little like artsy in its own way, and there's a lot of like backstory to it that you can find elsewhere on the internet, but it's just from top to bottom, straightforward. Like, it's a really good album. So, Adam, you?
Yeah, I like Churches is like one of my favorite bands. Churches spelled with a V. They're like a synth pop group out of Scotland. They're pretty freaking awesome. Let's see. Beyond that, I like this band, The War on Drugs. They're kind of like a rock band, but he uses kind of some synth pedals stuff in there too. He's like probably my favorite person I've ever seen live. He just like had like 20 pedals in front of him, and it's like he's just like playing 3 different guitars and like pedaling all over and doing all this weird crazy stuff. I don't know, it's really cool. So I like him in terms of rock. And then I like Phoebe Bridgers, who's this kind of folk indie rock artist. Everything she sings is like some of the most sad stuff I've ever heard. So if you're looking for something upbeat, definitely don't listen to her, but she's really, really good. And then in terms of pop, I really like Carly Rae Jepsen. Unironically, I got her dedicated. Here it is. A dedicated tour shirt on right now.
Yes.
She's fantastic. I'm not a huge fan of her first album, Kiss. It's fine, but Emotion really is one of the seminal pop albums I think of the last decade. It's fantastic. You can listen from top to bottom. One of the best car albums you can listen to at all. So I love Carly Rae Jepsen. If anyone is willing to dabble in it and avoid the being made fun of every time you say you like Carly Rae Jepsen and having people say, "Oh, Call Me Maybe," is she still a thing? She's a fun artist to like. So,
my follow-up question to both of you guys, and this is something that I struggle with. How do you go about finding new music? Do you end up using like a Spotify and letting it suggest it for you? Do you generally use like friends' suggestions? Because I've struggled at like my finding Soundgarden and other bands. It was like a total accident. Like I heard one song and I was like, and I think this is a way for a lot of people, but then you're like, oh, I'll listen to a couple of their other songs and those are good too. And then you kind of go off. But is there a preferred route that you go about finding new music?
Mine's kind of changed because before it would be like, especially with Scrubs, Scrubs would have like a song, and that's actually how I heard about Audioslave because they had a song on an episode of Scrubs that was really good. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And then you listen to that. So like different like TV shows or movies, and then also like video games like NBA 2K and FIFA and Madden always seem to have like a variety of music. So when I was really into those, that's kind of how I found new music. Lately, though, it's just been, I would say, friend like stuff that other people play, or I'll just kind of stumble upon it because like there'll definitely be some like alternative music that Emma listens to that I'll hear and I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. And there'll be some like rap or grime over in Britain that I'll listen to that Emma will pick up on. So I think it's just more like what other people are listening to now compared to before it was like TV and video games.
Yeah, I'll dabble with like the Discover Weekly playlist on Spotify. I find it ends up just pulling up a lot of songs that I already know and have listened to, which is cool. I mean, like, yeah, I guess I can discover them again. I use Pitchfork quite a bit. I'm that asshole, but I don't know. They always have new, I don't know. They always are able to find some new artists that I haven't really heard of, which I appreciate. I'll just like, if they happen to give an album best new album, I'll check it out sometimes. Most of the time, it's just like some metal crappy thing that I don't want to listen to at all, which is fine. Good for you, Pitchfork. But like,
they just gave out a perfect score to someone, I think. Like,
yeah, they gave it to Fiona Apple's album, which is cool. I like Fiona Apple. I gave the album one listen on Friday. I was hungover, and it was the last thing I wanted to listen to because her album is like it's like made with dogs. She like made it in her own house, like pounding like a using like rhythmic stuff as like ancient, like pounded on your fist, using like hitting hammers together or something. I was like, this is the last thing I need to listen to right now while my head is pounding. Okay. So
how are you hungover on Friday?
It was my birthday last Thursday, and
that's
right.
all
I have to say. Yeah,
that's fair. That's fair. I was thinking about that. I was like, it was a Friday. Like, I've definitely consumed more alcohol in this like pandemic, but
Thursdays go hard, man. Even now in the pandemic, you got to go hard on your average Thursday.
So that's how I find new music usually.
Okay. Cool. Sweet.
All right. Hey, we've got a new segment here. Home cooking. Riley rates shawarma. So wait, okay. Did you make shawarma at home?
Yes. So
how did it turn out?
Well, so here's the thing, right? So obviously for anybody who's listened 47 minutes in, apologies that literally 5 seconds of this was basketball content, but we're filling the airwaves right now. So it is what it is at this point. So I've been trying ever since. So my fiance, she worked at the YMCA and she ended up having to work late every night. And so I ended up doing a lot of the cooking, which is all good. And I've gotten a lot better than I used to be. I used to like struggle with even like grilled cheese sandwiches, so I've come a long way. And so I found this recipe for shawarma. I have no idea if it's like legit. It probably isn't. It literally was just like stab the chicken a lot and then put it in a bag with like yogurt, garlic, lemon juice, and then a bunch of spices like cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, a whole bunch of things, then let that sit overnight. So it's like, what is proper shawarma? I don't know. It probably wasn't actually, but that was the recipe it gave me. I don't have a grill, so I ended up doing it on a pan on the stove and then just using some naan bread and then making like a homemade tzatziki with like dill and yogurt and all that sort of stuff. Turned out really well. And I would want to try actual shawarma either during the pandemic or once this is all over to compare. But I would say based on it, when you open it, it's like, wow, that smells a lot like cinnamon. Like this is just going to be straight up cinnamon chicken on a pita, essentially. It turned out better than that. Thankfully, like it cooked off enough during the actual like cooking on the stove. But if you find a shawarma recipe, don't be intimidated by the spices like I was. I was like, oh, I'm really nervous. If you make the tzatziki or whatever sauce alongside of it properly, that'll cut against it, and then you'll kind of have a nice balance. So I was a fan. It turned out really well. And yes, I did make it homemade, but if it was legit, that's an open question.
Wow.
Yeah, I love Indian food, but I never went with shawarma just because every time I go, I always just end up getting a tikka masala. Whether it's like lamb or pork or chicken, it's just tikka masala seems to be the main go-to. But shawarma, I definitely want to try at some point.
I think one of the challenges and one of the opportunities about the pandemic that we're going through right now is it's an opportunity for a lot of people to potentially either change their diets or try things that they might not have before. So I've gotten really used to trying new recipes all the time. We're making a push now, whether it's forced upon you or otherwise, based on like shortage at your grocery store. Be like, okay, we'll do a little bit more vegetarian things this week, and I've been working to try and like build the recipe book together, et cetera, et cetera. So I've taken this, and I think probably a lot of other people are as well, as a chance to like either work on cooking, try new things, whatever it is. So I think if you were looking for other, silver linings in the whole pandemic, I think that would be one that I would personally point to. I don't know about others.
Yeah, it's definitely tough when you put in a grocery order and it's not ready for like 5 days out, and then you get like closer to that 5th day and you're running out of food. It's like, okay, we got to throw something together. What do we have in the pantry? Okay, we'll make something with this.
I love you branching out, Riley. Maybe I'll try shawarma soon. I was going to make something with pitas tonight, but I don't know if I have time to marinate it in time. But maybe I'll do shawarma later this week.
It did say marinate 4 to 24 hours. We did closer to the 24, just because generally when I've tried marinating things for like 2 hours, I'm like, it could use more work. So I would suggest a longer marination time is always critical. So.
Yeah.
Well, moving on from the shawarma segment, we have something that Kyle has prepared for us. It is in relation to, I'll just let him say it.
All right. How do I first? Let's just say this is not for everybody. This is only for a small minority of people that is getting way too much attention lately.
Yes.
I am talking about the idiots over in Brookfield yesterday. I am talking about ESPN Homer. I am talking about Chuck Friedman. I'm talking about anyone that thinks this whole coronavirus is a hoax. Mm-hmm. And all I want to tell you all is stay home and shut the hell up. If it was safe to be out in the public, we'd be out in the public. No one's arguing it. No one wants to be staying at home, but we have to do it. We have to do it for the greater good of the community. The biggest reason is we don't want to spread this virus, because there's plenty of times where you might be carrying it that you're not aware of, and you might give it to someone else. And all that's going to do is infect more people, and worse, it's going to overwhelm our health care, which is already overworked as it is. I just don't get why people can't put that core concept together, and then they're going to sit at home and complain about, oh, I can't go golfing. Golfing is not a need. Golfing is on the Maslow hierarchy of needs. It is a basic want. But of course, the same group of people like Chuck, like Homer, like these people in Brookfield, they're not used to having things not available to them. They're not used to getting what they want. So unfortunately, for once in their life, they're not getting what they want. And now they're bitching and moaning about it. And they just need to realize that within their little privileged bubble, like there is a whole world where there are people dying. There are people getting sick. There are people putting their lives at risk to try and contain this as much as possible. I would love to be able to go to a bar, watch soccer, and hang out with all my friends. I would love to take my son to see his grandparents and that they can hold him for the first time in 2 months. But we can't. That's just the way it is. I'm going to stay at home so that way we can make this be more of a reality sooner rather than later. And the longer that you keep going outside and the longer that you keep doing these stupid ass protests, the longer the stay-at-home order is going to be. I understand it's not great for the economy. I understand there's definitely a flaw to all of it, but at the same time, going with the mindset of people need to die in order for our economy to bounce back makes absolutely no sense to me. And honestly, you keep telling people like me, you need to follow the law. And even when people like me follow the law, we still end up getting shot. And yet here you are blatantly disregarding the law. It's just mind-blowing. It's idiotic. And I would love to tell these people in this hypocritical group that if you can't at least do it for the greater good of the community, do it for your own selfish ass self or for someone you care about. Because if that person that you care about or yourself gets sick, you better damn well hope that there is still a bed and ventilator available to you. Because what your actions, what you're constantly bitching and moaning about, not being able to go out and do stuff, all that's going to do is make it so that if you do need that situation, it's not going to be available. And then you're going to blame the hospitals. Then you're going to blame the healthcare workers. Then you're going to blame the government. You're going to blame everyone else besides yourself. So, Chuck, Homer, people in Brookfield, people in Austin, Trump idiots, all of you, this pandemic is not great. Stay the hell at home, and for once realize that it isn't just about you, and that's why we are all staying at home. I'm done.
It's pretty strong.
That was good. Thank you, Kyle. I appreciated it.
I think
I've just gotten sick of it.
I agree with all the takes, Kyle. I think this was always going to be the difficulty with this whole process of flattening the curve, or whatever terminology you want to use. Is, we haven't seen the like worst case scenario. So everyone's like, dude, I told you it was BS, bro. Come on. Like the issue was always going to be, if it worked, then everybody's going to point back, be like, see, we overreacted. And like I said earlier, I think part of the issue, it's twofold, right? One, yes, obviously all the fallout economically and everything is not great, but more so we're still in that weird midpoint right now where we're too deep in to give up now, because then you might see a surge. We haven't gotten to a point where we're really curbing it, to the point where we can go back out. And then two, nobody either here or anywhere else around the world has come up with a real viable plan to be like, here's how we're going to get out of this. I would suggest to people that probably just wholesale quitting social distancing is not going to be the way we get out of this, but because nobody's really articulating, besides, the more extreme positions of either have to stay in completely and we have no real way out, or just open it up all the way. I think that's the conundrum. Now, obviously, people who were obviously yesterday at Brookfield, I think they were trying to get Barnes & Noble to open up again. So I understand where they're coming from there. I want Barnes & Noble to open up as well. However,
they really wanted Fleming's to open up as well.
I think, maybe that's a little bit too far on the outside of the norm, but I think it is a question that, whether it be for us talking about the NBA or other people just on their day-to-day lives, it's a conversation worth having, except there's a logical way to have it, and a way to acknowledge the fact that our reality and the way that we're going to be able to move forward, no matter what we do, is going to be really shifted in a meaningful way for a long time, until, like we said before, a vaccine or something like that comes out. And unfortunately, those with a platform, or those who might be a little more, not small-minded per se, but maybe thinking more so of themselves or what their own personal interests are, just have a platform that they're putting it out there, and it doesn't look good for them. So,
no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
And if you have someone in your life,
the worst part is, in Wisconsin.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, with Wisconsin, we just had an election where the largest city in the state only had 5 polling places.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be another spike, because there were still thousands of people that were out risking their lives because they felt like they had the right to vote and they needed to vote. And there's only 5 polling places. So you're seeing lines that would go hours long. There's going to be another spike. There's already going to be another spike happening, at least in the Milwaukee area. So it's not even that we're out of the woods yet, because we're not out of the woods. We're probably going to hit another peak relatively soon. And all the people that were out at the elections are going to be at risk. So it's just, I don't know. And then you're going to complain about, okay, we want to golf. Fine. Evers gives the go ahead to golf. Well, now we need to have cards.
That was pretty funny. That was a good, yeah.
It was like, no, you don't need cards. Just walk. Take your lazy ass and walk. And then it's going to be, well, you got to open the clubhouse, and you got to have, the bar cart girl that you can sexually harass, and she's only 17 and trying to do a summer job. It's just like, you're just going to create more whatabouts, and you're never going to be satisfied. So it's just like, at this point, just shut the hell up.
Can't say it much better myself. All I would say is, if you do have someone in your life, these people on these platforms, whatever, they have a large platform. They've gotten to where they are because they've stuck their heels in so far that they're going to be 6 feet under soon, because they're going to be out with the COVID patients, and that's fine. But if you have someone in your life who's like, I don't think this is that serious, we don't need to do social distancing, just try and talk with them. Try and see if you can change their mind. It's important. Give them all these things. Maybe you won't, but it's worth a try. It's every single person that you can change and convince that this is something we all really need to stick to will make a difference. That's why we're all doing the kind of things that we're doing and make our own sacrifices. So hopefully you can convince other people to do it. I get mad. I had if I hear any of my friends going out and doing something I think is unnecessary, I tell them, well, screw you. My wife is a nurse. You want to go visit her in the hospital? Like, F off. Okay. Like, this is really serious. So, if you have people in your life, just try and like talk with them about it. I feel like these people are going to do what they're going to do. It's really annoying. It's really frustrating. Probably is a smaller segment of the population than it seems, which is why I try and avoid Twitter now, because it just makes my mind get exploded. So, yeah, I don't know. That's what I would say.
It's difficult. The whole situation is difficult. It's reasonable to have conversations about what we might do next, what these next couple of months looks like. But while you're doing that, there's a reasonable and societally or socially acceptable or responsible way to go about your day-to-day activities, and while we try to figure things out. So just everyone, take it easy. Take it easy. Stay inside for a little while longer. We know it sucks, obviously.
Just sit out on your deck. It's nice. It's starting to get nice outside. If you want to work on your trash-ass golf game, get your clubs and just chip a couple in your backyard.
All right. There's our plug for social distancing for the day. A little stronger than usual, but worthwhile. Thank you, Kyle, for preparing that. That was good. All right. It's time for Vulture Talk, Riley. I don't have the thing queued up, so we're just going to do it.
That's all right. It's really strange, and I think it's notable the fact that even in the midst of the largest pandemic in over 100 years, we're still got people coming out the woodwork, just flocking these buzzards. So I got two this week. So it's our good friends, the Warriors. Of course, how thirsty can you get? We're going to push the limits of that. We're going to see where the boundary is. And the Mavs as well. So our two stories, they'll be on tomorrow's Monday Morning Media Roundup, or if you're listening to this on Monday, it's on today's Monday Morning Media Roundup. The one for the Mavs was from our sister site, Mavs Moneyball. It was literally just the writer saying, is the Bucks misfortune the Dallas Mavericks gain? And the entire article was, we have no idea if he'll come to Dallas, but we have these two Euro guys, and Giannis likes European dudes, we think, maybe. So maybe he'll come here. And that was it. That was the article. But they pushed that. So we have that going, right? Then for the Warriors, and I think this is a function of the fact that every media company and their sister sports media company pushed all their resources to Oakland/San Francisco when the Warriors thing was happening. Their misfortune that they have 7,000 employees there, and the team is god awful. So there was a roundtable for the NBC Sports, I'm guessing their local affiliate, and it was 4 media members talking about there's a chance that Giannis could come here, and their evidence was he's named Steph as his favorite current NBA player twice, and also that if the Bucks didn't make the finals, then maybe he would leave. So that was the evidence that they had. Okay. So really, the Vulture Talk, it exists. It's in a very weakened state right now because there's no evidence really to go off of besides wild speculation. But there it is. That's what we got going on.
Remember when the Toronto fans were like really excited to try and be in first place for Vulture Talk? I think the Warriors are starting to run away from the competition.
I think for me, it's difficult because obviously if you're a Bucks fan, you have no real basis upon which to ever hope that you would get a meaningful free agent that wasn't OJ Mayo. And so when you're going from that perspective, even the fake AD to MKE tweets is this is just gross. Why am I tweeting this? why am I tweeting this out right now? But it's these other fan bases, even Dallas, who has zero track record of anything of note when it comes to free agents. They have this newfound pride or newfound swagger, how they're a free agent destination, which I don't know where that's coming from. So I guess I just don't understand the psychology of it. You get KD on a fluke once, and then he turncoats on you and bolts for Brooklyn, and it's okay, we're cool, next one up. So I don't really understand the mindset behind it, but I guess
I was going to say there's only 2 franchises that I would say legitimately attract and get free agents, and that's the Lakers and the Miami Heat. That's the only 2 teams I can think of that in recent history they can get the free agents they want, or at least they've been able to show they can back up their claim of we are a free agent destination. If the Knicks were competent, maybe them.
Yeah. I was excited when the Bucks got Greg Monroe, though. I gotta say, I mean, I was like, we're a free agent destination now, baby.
I was working that summer. I was working as a janitor at my local high school, and I remember when the news came across the wire, we were all gathered, like all us high school / I think there were a couple of college guys. We were just, dude, this is it. We're changing. The franchise has changed. Like we're going to the finals. Which, we talk about.
They're going to win 50 games after that.
It didn't work out in the way that we thought, but I think it was still a beautiful. It was a beautiful thing because it still signaled like a slight shift, even though it was just Greg Monroe and it didn't work out. The fact that a big-ish name free agent, at least for that class, chose to come to Milwaukee was pretty cool, especially over, I think it was like, wasn't the Knicks in the Lakers? I think that, or I can't remember who the third team was.
I think the Knicks were for sure one of the teams.
And there was another team.
That's when it was funny. We were like, yeah, we beat the Knicks for a free agent.
Yeah, even though they've been god-awful for decades now. So, yeah, shout out to Greg Monroe. We hope you're killing it over in Germany still. You're a favorite.
Thank you, Riley. Vulture talk. It's good to get some B-ball talk on there. Now, we've had enough of it, so it's time for your fountain pen review.
Yes, I apologized 2 weeks ago for not having mine ready. So this week... again, we'll have to see if you're able to see all that well. So I have my Diplomat Traveler this week. This is the smallest pen that I have. It's a all steel body. Diplomat is a German maker. You can kind of see on these ones, they're unique in that they fire blast every single one of them. So they all have you can see where the metal kind of different coloration based on how long it was in the fire for. I'll pop it here. Real small. I mean, it's tiny comparatively when it's just in your hand. I mean, it barely even shoots out the back. Part of the difficulty with it is you can't post the cap all that well, which for smaller pens like this is usually critical to help balance it out based on its weight and length and everything. But interesting enough, I would say this might be my favorite pen out of the bunch that I have. It was the second pen that I got. It's kind of still in the cheaper-ish tier. I mean, none of them are all that cheap, but this is still cheaper. The nib on this, on the medium, beautiful. It's gorgeous. It doesn't matter the ink that I have in there. Generally gold nibs are a little bit smoother, a little bit silkier of a writer, but for something like this, for a steel nib, mediums also in a German manufacturer tend to run a little bit wider, but I think this is the perfect width for my writing. I don't have big hands, which sometimes can be a difficulty for people who use smaller pens like this. But yeah, if you're looking for something mid-tier-ish, not too expensive, it's unique, it's high quality, I would definitely suggest going for this.
I like the fire blasted.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely fell for it when I was like, oh, dude, every single pen's unique. That's so cool. Like, mine's going to be totally different from others. And maybe if I could repurchase it, I'd probably go for like one of the base black or something. But if it's your first pen, you want something that's really unique, maybe I would suggest maybe doing the Fire Blast. And I mean, it's cool when you have a bunch of different colors and inks you can go with it too. So, yeah.
I love it. Glad to have it back. Thank you, Riley.
No problem.
All right, guys, let's close it out with our, we never did this last week, so let's close it out with what would have been the last 2 games of the Bucks season. All right. If I remember correctly, we were riding high after a really strong week. And we're closing out with really tough games. It's a Sunday home versus Atlanta, and then I forget, Tuesday or Wednesday at Brooklyn. So here we go. The last home game of the season against Atlanta is. I didn't get you guys' predictions. Wait, what do you guys? What do you guys think?
I think so. I'm going to go 0-2, but that's because we're going to do the Bonzi Colson / Tim Frazier games part 2. So it's going to be the Frank Mason, Cam Reynolds, and DJ Wilson games. Those guys are going 48 plus in each of those. So I think we're going to lose, but only because it's a giant meme at this point because it's the final 2 games of the year.
No, This is when Robin Lopez shines. 2-0.
Yeah.
Okay.
2020 games. Here we go.
112.95 Bucks. I know you guys weren't expecting that, but it's pretty solid win for the Bucks here. I'm just taking a look at the box score, pulled it down here. Giannis did play in this one. It wasn't as you predicted, Riley. I don't know if NBA Game Sim can do that, but
apparently
20 doesn't believe in load management.
23 for Giannis, 17 for Chris, 16 for Eric. So pretty traditional in that sense. Pat Connaughton had 10 points in this one. He feels like he's been pretty quiet. Thanasis did score 2 points. I wanted to mention that. DJ Wilson didn't get in the game. Neither did Kyle Korver or Sterling Brown. So, yeah, kind of just, a pretty classic like Sunday home win, but sent the crowd out in a good way. So, okay. The last game of the season, guys. Last time we'll ever be able to do this. Here we go. The Nets. Wow.
I hope they go off for 70% from 3 because we need this season to end on the right note.
103-82 Bucks win. Okay. Really solid victory.
So 20% shooting from the other team.
Yeah. Okay. So the Nets, if we're looking at that overall, 23% from 3, 7 of 30. Very classic performance by them. Got to the free throw line 23 times. The Nets shoot 35% overall, so a tough game, I would say, for them. Not great. Bucks shoot just 25% from 3, 10 of 39.
Actually seems realistic.
Not a great game for them, but George Hill goes off for 20 points. So a really solid game from him. He leads the team. Giannis, 19. Eric, 14. You wouldn't guess it, but Chris, only 11. Quiet night for him to close out the season. Only takes 8 field goal attempts in a very traditional Chris sense. Robin and Brooke combined for 17. And, that's interesting. Okay, so in this one, they decided that Pat Connaughton and Wesley Matthews didn't score, but DJ, Dante, Thanasis all scored. So
they combined for 50 in the final second half.
So, guys, I think the Bucks
season comes to a close.
Yeah, it's pretty sad, but they really had the first simulation week was a little rocky, but I feel like since then they kind of came back.
I would agree. I think, I'm not sure if I would say it was necessarily the most accurate sim out there, but for in a pinch, I would say it was a beautiful thing. We're glad we had this ride with NBA Sim, and I pray to God we don't have to do this once we start like regular season in the fall, and we have to just do all 82 next year. Crossing my fingers that's not the case, but we appreciate it. Thank you, NBA Sim.
Kyle,
better than the alternative.
Kyle, can you take us out and just give us the final narratives then for the regular season? Just give us the breadth of the Eastern Conference here.
Yeah.
All right. So Bucks clinch a 1 seed. They're rolling, still overlooked. They're going to take on the Magic, crush them. It's going to be a 4-game sweep. There's one game where Orlando threatens because Terrence Ross still a Bucks killer, so he obviously has to get 45 points in a game. Bucks still win. However, Boston really gets that 2nd seed. ESPN's really loving Boston to get out of the East. Think it's going to be a 4-4-6. They're going to win in 4. Actually, no, sorry. Win in 4, win in 6, win in 6 to get to the finals. Take on the Lakers. Ratings go through the roof. ESPN's loving this. They already got the next documentary ready. Toronto feels disrespected once again. Win their first round matchup against the Sixers, who are the 6th seed. Crush the Sixers in 5. Not even close. Philly implodes. Everyone's saying Embiid out. Brett Brown gets fired right after the series ends. So kind of unfortunate. Miami and Indiana battle it out. Miami wins a tough 6-game series. Malcolm Brogdon plays really well for the 2 games that he was healthy for. It is what it is. Bam Adebayo solidifies his case for getting the most improved player. Miami takes on Milwaukee, and despite all the assumptions, Milwaukee wins in a gentleman's sweep in 5. Obviously, Miami nightlife still undefeated, so they lose game 3. Then Milwaukee takes on Boston, and Milwaukee wins in 6. It gets a little dicey. They lose game 2 at home. It was a weird shooting night. Giannis didn't play that well for some odd reason. Gets in foul trouble, but turns it around, gets to the finals. Milwaukee versus LA, and Milwaukee will end up winning the championship in 7.
Wow. I like that. Yeah, that's fun.
There it is.
Champions in my mind, baby. In my heart, we're champs. It doesn't matter how
this is what happens when I have been working on the what ifs. I'm just giving the Bucks a title whenever I can.
Oh,
What they should do is, if the season gets canceled, they can go back to this podcast, and we can still have Justify the Parade to go out and be like Brew Hoop Podcast NBA Sim / Kyle Narrative Champions, and we all gather obviously 6 to 8 feet apart from one another down some stretch in Milwaukee, and we all quietly celebrate because we can't actually gather anywhere. So it'll be a beautiful thing. I'm looking forward to it.
I cannot wait. Well, God love everyone that listened to us for the full hour and 15 minutes. God love everyone who continues to listen and subscribed. You can share it with your friends if you really think they would enjoy this. We'll be back again in the future. Hopefully, maybe there will be some basketball content to talk about. If not, I guess like more shawarma reviews. Maybe we'll try some new spices. Who knows?
There's always a movie review.
I have been thinking, and I kind of ran this by you guys as well, doing the Inside the Basket Blogger studio, where I, depending on what we do on these Sundays, bring one of our other intrepid members over at Brew Hoop just to talk about their journey to the Bucks, a little bit about them. So maybe keep an eye out for that. But we're trying to come up with content. It's just, difficult right now because the world is at a standstill. So what are you going to do?
Yeah. In full disclosure, I literally put the outline together for this right before the podcast. Usually I do a little better for these guys, but I did half-hearted effort.
If you couldn't tell.
So that one's a little bit on me. But thank you for everyone who's listening. Brewhoop.com. Thanks to everyone who did the helped voted in the best Bucks team to never win a championship. Shout out to Kyle's really awesome piece about what if Don Nelson's Bucks broke through. Definitely go check that out on Brewhoop. Probably have some more content for you this week. SBNation.com, the big one, is going to be doing their best team to never win a championship. So head over there and you can vote. But in the meantime, thank you to everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you again soon.